Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Chase Jarvis. Welcome to another episode of Chase Jarvis Live here on CreativeLive. You're tuned into the 30 Days of Genius series. That's where I sit down with the world's top creatives, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders and extract actionable insights for you to live your dreams in career, hobby, and life. If you're new to this series, go to creativelive.com/30 Days of Genius, the number 30 Days of Genius. Just press that little sign up button there, blue button, and then you'll get one of these badass interviews in your inbox every morning for 30 days. My guest today, you will know him well. He is the frontman for the platinum-selling band 30 Seconds to Mars. He's an artist in many, many ways, and you probably know him best for his acting, where he's been in movies like Fight Club, American Psycho, Requiem for a Dream, and very notably where he won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor in the Dallas Buyers Club. My guest today is none other than Mr. Jared Leto.
Thank you very much.
Good day, sir.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
You almost said Best Supporting Actress.
I know. You know what was going on, right?
You know, I take as a compliment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's going on. Played a trans character.
Thank you.
All right, Jared, thanks again for being on the show, man. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Well, first of all, very excited to sit down with you because I think I talked about in the intro, and I've sat down with many people who are a thing. They are an entrepreneur, they are an actor, or they are a musician, and you are many things. We were talking about that before we started recording. We're all starting to become multi-hyphenates. Like, how do you define yourself besides human being? Is it artist? Do you consider yourself a musician, or do you play to whatever strength the environment requires you to be in that particular moment?
Well, people have asked me for a long time now about the many different things that I do, and I've responded often that I think it's really just a reflection of the times that we live in. I think that a lot of people do a lot of different things, and the ability to do that is pretty intoxicating. You know, it opens up a whole new way to fail, which is great because you learn a lot from failure. But for me, it was a chance to have more responsibility, to take on and have more control, and to bring whatever vision that either I had or we had as a team, 30 Seconds to Mars, to life. And I think working with record companies taught me a lot about how to be independent, because there can be a lot of bureaucracy with big companies like that. Of
course.
And we've always been independent-minded and big believers that you shouldn't wait for permission to get into action. So if you take those kind of steps, and if that is your philosophy, then you end up doing a lot of different things.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I'm aware of is as you just sort of alluded to, it's the first time in the history of the world where the gatekeepers are either not present or way in the background relative to historically. If you wanted to hang in a gallery, you needed permission from the gallerist. You wanted to be in a magazine, you needed permission from the photo editor. You wanted to be in a film, you had to wait for someone else to produce that film and decide whether or not they were going to include you in it. You mentioned being independent. Is this something that I'm just tuned into? Do you feel that same groundswell of independence is the new? It's almost riskier to go with the old system than it is to remain independent. That's my thesis. How would you react to that?
I think that's one of the great things technology has given us is the ability to not ask permission from the gatekeepers, to be independent, spirited, to be able to write a song in our garage and put it up the same day, get feedback, and then break down in tears because everyone hates it.
because the YouTube comments. Right?
Yeah, but that's the good thing. I mean, it's harder than ever to find content, to find work, and maybe sometimes to find an audience. But I still think it's a wonderful time right now to be able to speak your mind and to share your voice with the world without having to ask for permission. So that's really exciting, yeah.
So one of I think learning how to learn is a really core part of this new ecosystem where you can be, and especially sort of if our parents had one job, we will have 5, and our next generation will have 5 at the same time. Like lifelong learning becomes a really important part of it. The way that I approached it was I went way deep into photography and like learned how to become a photographer, mastered that, and then was able to move into directing and now sort of into building companies. But I never really was aware of your process or progress. Did you have that same sort of approach, or did you just start doing everything all at the same time and the rising tide floated all your boats? How did you approach it?
Well, I started off in art school.
Here in LA or where?
No, I was on the East Coast, and I was studying to be a painter. And I always knew I wanted to do something creative with my life, but while I was in art school, that's a great opportunity to try out a lot of different things. And I loved sculpture, I loved fine art, I really loved photography. I spent a lot of time in the darkroom.
It's a great place to.
Yeah,
oh, it's beautiful,
you come out 8 hours later.
Yeah, the time is like literally, time stops.
Carcinogenic chemicals and just
right.
that was fun. And that red light, people don't experience that anymore.
It's super romantic.
Yeah, it's very cool. And that magical moment when you would, first of all, take photographs. I did a lot of street photography back then, which was, an obvious place to go to because you had people to shoot and.
Yeah, don't require sort of sitting down opposite.
Yeah.
You can just
And I like to observe and. So anyway, but that magic moment when you take some photographs and then you go and process the film, and then look at your film and see, oh, okay, there's something there in the negative, and then that other moment where when you would take it into the dark room, and
tilt the tray,
and see an image for the first time, or a mistake, or a photo that had maybe the shutter speed was set in a way where there was maybe a little bit too much movement, but it ended up being a good thing. Something you would have corrected had you known, but you didn't, and then ended up with something that was, I guess, the holy accident.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty magical thing to learn from. But anyway, our art school was an important period of time for me, and I guess I did start to learn that you can express yourself in a lot of different ways during that period, and I carried that with me even through today.
Sure, did
and
you?
I'm a big believer that you don't ask permission to be a photographer, to be an editor, to be an interviewer. That we all have, we all have the ability to and the right to succeed gloriously or fail gloriously.
For sure.
And
This started out for me very, very selfishly. Like I've only had a career as an artist, and I started being really inspired by mostly non-photographers. People who were outside my genre. People who were doing a lot of different things. And in this series, fortunately, I am connected to or friends with most of these folks who have been inspirational. So I believe in the sort of the long form answer. Also, I know you don't give many of these long interviews, so A, thankful for your time. But B, given that this is in a soundbite world, is there anything that you want to talk about with the variety of projects that you're working on? Like the fact that, was it music first and then acting? Was it acting for, then music? What was your sort of priority? Do you have that, or again, was it?
Well, for me, it was art first, and it was visual art first. But I was raised in a way where visual art, performance art, music, it was all the same thing. Photography, film, it was all the same thing. That wasn't a different type of person that did that. It wasn't a different path. It was a creative path. So I think that the creative path was first, art was first, and that's still the path that I'm on. Of course, you have to be, and you have to do business at times, and that uneasy relationship will always be there. But I started on the creative path, and that's the path that I really like to be on.
You mentioned the business side. Let's go there for a second, because I think it creates a lot of anxiety for folks who identify creative. how important is it to develop your own chops? I consider you a really astute or aware business person. Is that a learned trait? Did you have that? Is that part of art school? Were you learning that simultaneously, or did you realize it was going to add value to your career trajectory? Like, what role does that play in there? Because it can be slippery for some people.
It plays a huge role. You either have to find someone who you trust, and they are your partner, your manager, your CEO, whatever, or you have to become that person yourself, or there's a lot of gray area there. But I think that the more knowledge you have, the better. You certainly learn once you get taken good advantage of. That's a good lesson to learn sometimes. And we certainly had that happen with us, and that was documented in Artifact.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Sure.
And I thought I was pretty informed before that happened to us and to 30 Seconds to Mars. But I had a lot to learn. And while I made that film, even after I went through the process, I learned even more making the film than I did going through getting sued by a record company for $30 million.
That's so nuts.
Yeah.
For the folks at home who might not be aware, Artifact, incredible documentary documenting that journey. And the short version is that they had a great contract, signed it, were touring globally all over the place, massive success, huge revenue, and yet you found out you were in debt.
Yeah, we sold millions of albums and then found out we were millions of dollars in debt, and we looked into it and discovered that we were in this kind of convoluted contractual nightmare that we would never really get out of. So we went to war and we fought for our creative freedom, and we won. And we documented that with this film, this little movie. I mean, so we learned about business.
It's a great film, by the way.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And we learned how to make a documentary, which is very, very hard to make a feature-length documentary. Is, I think, one of the hardest things to do that I've done creatively.
Interesting. What was the? You mentioned it was a positive outcome, but how about the time when you realized that you had to take action on your behalf? That you whether it was managers or whatever, that wasn't going to be something that you were going to leave to other people, that you had to step up and sort of, again, I'm trying to unpack for so many people on the other side of these cameras. There's that drama of like, oh God, like it's not my area of specialization. I'm an artist, I'm a creative, but you clearly had to lean into it.
We had something happen to us, and it's more of a, I think, a feeling when you're being treated unfairly, and you have to do what's right. So for us, it was very clear that there was a right and a wrong here. Kind of like if someone fell down in front of you in the street. I don't know about you, like I reach my hand out.
Absolutely.
And I say, you okay?
Of course.
So that was, for us, it was very clear. Like, this is a battle that we have to fight. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be kind of dangerous in a way, professionally. Because other artists had walked that path and lost a great deal many times. So anyway, it was a very clear decision for us. But I think as far as learning about business, I think you learn as you go through the process of the creative process. You take a photograph. You take a photograph and then you figure out, well, how do I share this? How do I make a living doing this? How do I make a living? How do I sell a photograph maybe even before a living? And then how do I do this again? How do I repeat this? How do I make this sustainable? Who are the people that can help me do this? So it's kind of a process that it's self-fulfilling in a way, I think, as you go through it. But you guys must talk about that a lot in here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, CreativeLive, it's not just, that's one thing that that I opted out of art school. Was because there wasn't sort of a way to make a living there. It was very much just the craft, and the craft. I sought out my own teachers and mentors through the process, and like, there's nothing like having to put food on your own table as a motivator for how to figure out the business side of it. And that's one thing we do talk about at CreativeLive a lot. There's the Money and Life channel, which is specifically about how to make a living and a life in each one of these, in photography, in film, and design. And that has proven to be one of our most powerful channels, for sure.
It's incredible today, though, the amount of information that's out there. Like, if you want to be a photographer, you can come to CreativeLive and learn almost everything, probably everything you need to know. When I went to art school, there was a process that was kind of mysterious, and you needed a lot more equipment if you wanted to process your own film. That's a lot of work to do that in your house. You have to make a darkroom. You have to get chemicals. You have
the
to
bathroom turns into a toxic place when you do that.
So the barrier of entry was much higher. So I think that we live in a really exciting time where people don't have to get caught up in some of that Sisyphean task of the technology that was there at the time has been made much simpler, easier, non-toxic, and people can focus on the creative part of it.
Yeah, let's talk about, in my intro, I slipped and said best supporting actress, and then you called me on it right when we opened. And specifically, that was around the character that you played. A, like we've talked about this a little bit before, congratulations. B, I was in that space where Rayon was, you played a trans character, Rayon, and she's a woman in my mind. Very, very powerful performance. How does one prepare for something that's such an investment like that? I mean, there's a lot written, and I've talked to other mutual friends that were closer to it than I was, but that it was just a phenomenal performance. You were method actor in character. Like, can you just go there for us for a little bit and give me a little bit of context there?
Well, I guess when I take on a role, I become a writer, a detective, amateur psychiatrist, and I start to investigate this life, and it's kind of like it reminds me a bit of learning about sculpture when I was in art school. And you hear this kind of cliche. It's about uncovering what's there. Sometimes, but I think with building a role, building a character, for me, I like to immerse myself as much as possible in this new life, and really dive as deep as possible, because I think that the deeper that you dive, the greater everything will be, the reward, the contribution that you're able to make, the truth, the authenticity. So with Rayon, with the Joker, with all of it, I start from a place of asking questions, and I start from a real, below, the baseline is really low. I start having no answers.
Assume nothing.
Assume nothing. And, I oftentimes have no idea where I'm going to end up. I would say I never really know where I'm going to end up. I may have some instinct and be excited about some ideas, but I ask a lot of questions, and, you never know what piece of research that you do, what book you read, what person that you meet and interview with, whether it's a psychiatrist who worked at a prison for, 40 years dealing with psychopaths, and or you're at a shelter in Louisiana talking to transgender kids. You never know where you're going to learn that key bit of information that informs a huge part of a performance. So there's a little bit of a leading question that I'll reveal why I went there, and it seems to me that you're talking about it in terms of method acting and specifically with Rayon, but that deal of authenticity and going deep and maybe to a place you don't want to go, and you never know where the most valuable things are going to come from, but it's really the journey that impacts that. Is it fair to say that transcends just method acting to
to music, to telling your own story, to art, to just at large, that depth, authenticity, willing to go there,
I think
vulnerability?
it probably is very similar to the way that I've worked on other projects outside of acting. And I guess goes back to what we talked about before. It's really the same thing to me. It all comes from the same place. You know, it's hard to list sometimes, you know, all the things that I do because, of course, you say musician, of course, you say actor, and you could say entrepreneur, which we were talking about before, which is a little wonky of a word. But I'm also an editor. I spend a great deal of my time editing. That's something I do most days of the week. I'm working on an edit of something. You know, I've done a lot of photography in my life. I've done a lot of art in my life.
Curating, you're producing documentary films, you're directing documentary films.
And then there's the whole business side of life as well. So, you know, I think we live in a really fun time where you don't have to ask permission to explore a lot of different avenues. The trap door is doing too many things and not doing them to a degree where there's a sense of reward. Because you don't have to do things, like you could say you don't want to do too many things because you won't do them well. Well, you don't have to do things well in order for them to be worthy. Some people like to surf. They don't surf very well, but it's still fun.
That's me.
Okay. You know, and there are a lot of things that are still fun if you don't do them well, if you know what I mean.
I do.
So it's great to do that. I think you just have to have some sense of reward with those things, you know.
Yeah, let's go back to Rayon for a second. Was the reward playing the role? Was the reward the Oscar? Was it a combination, or was it something different?
No, I think the reward was, as far as the character and the role, the reward was the building and the dreaming up of this life. She wasn't based on a real person. A lot of people don't realize that because it was a true story, based on a true story, the Dallas Buyers Club. But I think it was dreaming up this, breathing life into this character. That's the most exciting part for me. And as far as like accolades and those other things go, the biggest reward of getting awards is being able to share that experience with other people that are close to you, and to be able to take that light that shines your direction and shine it back on other things.
The empathy that you had in your acceptance speech for that was, to me, every bit as moving as the performance, because you used that as an opportunity to, as you said, reflect that light back on. There was a great use of that, if not rare, certainly fleeting moment of having that, the attention that you had on you there. I thought it was just a brilliant way of
Thank you, I
sharing
appreciate it.
Super powerful. Artifact, let's touch that. You said it was one of your hardest projects ever. Why was it hard? Was it because it was about you? Was it because it was about you and your brother and your band?
Documentaries are difficult because unlike scripted films where someone works on a script for a year or two, a director goes out and shoots it, and then you edit it. With a documentary, you shoot your script first and then you write your film. So the process is really, it was years of editing.
A lot of yellow stickies on the wall.
Yeah, yellow stickies and whiteboards and false starts and, you know, exciting days that turned into dead ends and a lot of doubt. Making a shorter form piece of content is a lot easier and a lot more fun. A feature-length documentary is really hard. And we didn't start shooting. We started shooting that. It was like a friend was holding the camera. I used to call him Shaky Cam. We didn't have lavs.
Yeah.
I think we had like what were they called, DVC?
Oh yeah, DVC Pro.
Something like that.
One of those little cameras?
Yeah, I think we started like that, and then we got the Panasonic one that was a DV cam again. I mean, it was like we
Homemade.
had tapes after tapes after tapes
Those
after
tapes,
tapes.
those little mini.
Yeah,
Oh my
and
God.
then we had to conform them all or transfer them
Yeah,
all. I mean, it was
transcode
a
all. It was
nightmare.
brutal, for
And
sure.
back then, I remember that it was a nightmare how we shot some certain things, and the way that we had to edit. Every time you made an edit, you had to go back and process that bit of
Yeah,
film.
render.
You had to render every time you made it, every single time.
So brutal.
So if you made a change, you had to sit and wait. And sometimes it took a long time.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
it's painful.
So it was years, it was a nightmare. And I'm glad that we told that story.
Yeah.
But we didn't set out to shoot a film. So we didn't set out with an outline or an idea in mind. It was like, oh, let's just cover this stuff. And then as the case went on, the battle went on, and during the course of making the album, This Is War, we knew we were on to something, because we were making this album, we were fighting our record company, we were financing the record ourselves, we were betting on ourselves, we were fighting this giant corporation. And then we started to get slightly better camera and maybe we should have a lav here. And
then you start looking at the earlier stuff going,
yeah, we're like, oh, Jesus. So there was a lot of craftsmanship, a lot of tricks employed to elevate what was there. But yeah, really, really glad we told that story.
It's a beautiful story. In the few minutes that we've got remaining, I'm trying to uncover two things in particular. One is a little bit about failure. So I think that's one of the things that is, I'm trying to represent the people who are on the other side of this camera. People who are going from 0 to 1, like trying to explore their creativity and sort of get out of their own skin or sort of get out of the world and into their own skin and explore creativity. And then there are people who consider themselves creative and want to sort of lean into that. And failure is a big thing. You mentioned a couple times, like starting, failing, starting again. You've many misstarts with Artifact, which is one of the reasons I'm trying to hang my hat on that a little bit as we're talking. Talk about that in the sphere of your work, being a multi-hyphenate artist and being involved in so many things. What role does that play for you?
Well, I only succeed a little bit because I fail a lot. That's a fact. I'll write hundreds of songs just to come up with 10 that are worthy to make the album. We'll have a 5-hour cut of Artifact just to get 90 minutes that's watchable. But failure is often the thing that leads us to success, and success is often the thing that leads us to fail. So it's a tricky one.
Yeah.
That's a funny thing to say, but it's a true, I believe it, and I found it to be true in my life. But failure is a great opportunity. Andy Warhol,
one of my favorite artists of all time.
The most famous artists in the world. Okay, Picasso and Andy Warhol, hands down. Okay, and I would say Andy Warhol, the most recognizable, most famous artist in the world, and will be for the next 100 years. So his first show in Los Angeles, he sold none of his artwork. I think that someone felt bad and maybe bought one of the pieces.
Yeah.
The soup cans.
Yeah.
And one or two, and there were a ton of them. And the gallery owner ended up buying them back from the people and kept it together as a set.
I remember reading that.
Yeah, and he said, Andy, I really think these should be kept together. The show didn't go so well, but you're incredible. I love these. I'd like to buy them all. How much do you want for them? And Andy said, well, send me a check for $1,000 or something like that.
Yeah, which ended up being worth hundreds of millions.
He sold them for, I think, for $16 or $20 million, and now I think they're worth about $100 million. But regardless, here's a guy who had a lot of success in his life and a ton of failure. But I like what he said about criticism, not just about failure, is that, just keep making art. Let other people decide if it's good or bad. And while they're trying to decide, you just continue to make art. That's a great, simple philosophy. You do what you got to do. Fail a lot, because in the failure becomes the most beautiful reward and result.
What's next? You got the big film coming out in August?
Yeah, in August, Suicide Squad comes out.
I think you either texted me or emailed me, or I don't remember how. I got a picture of you before it hit the news, maybe, of the costume.
Yeah.
That's freakish. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was fun. It was once in a lifetime. I mean, it was really something special to do. And again, you know, a huge opportunity to fail. And, you know, as an actor, part of your role in a film, you don't have very much control in the outcome. It's up to the director and the editor and the producers and the studio. But you contribute in the best way that you can. And I failed a lot during that film, but I took a lot of chances. So
the word on the street is that when you started acting, the whole set stopped and watched.
Oh, yeah,
so there's something, you were doing something, right? To make everybody,
nice to hear.
get everybody's attention. But
it's nice to hear. I mean, I think that one thing I promised myself is that I was going to be brave and I was going to take a lot of chances, and that's always fun to watch. You know, it's so I could see why people would say that,
he's
because
going there.
he's going there, and you fail a lot too. I mean, it's great. That's good fun to watch. So we'll see what people think, and hopefully they enjoy.
Fair enough. Anything you'd want to leave us with? A question I didn't ask that I should have?
No, just thank you for having me, man.
I'm super grateful for your time. You're an inspiration. The multi-hyphenate thing, I think it's the future of not just creativity, but the world, and you're living it every day. So.
And we'll have so many titles that will just be known as
a human.
That's right.
Sweet. Thanks a lot, brother. Appreciate it. And stay tuned for another one of these things which drops tomorrow.